Hello and welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to identify potential project organizational structures that you may encounter as a project manager. There are many potential structures and combinations for projects. Today we're going to cover some of the more common ones. First, functional-based organizations, matrix or composite-based organizations, and finally, project-based organization. Each one of these has its place in executing projects. Each one is favored by different organizations. Each one has its strengths and weaknesses. As part of these lessons, we'll explore all of these. Here we see a typical organization chart for a company. Most organizations are organized according to the functions, independent of how they run projects. Each function represents a key functional requirement for the organization to complete its business. As an example, the organization may have an engineering group, a sales group, operations, strategic planning, procurement, quality, and accounting department. Each one of these departments represents a function and has its own staff of specialists. Alternately, the organization may be structured by product line. Each key product line or segment is managed by its own group. For instance, in the auto industry, there may be a design group, a body group, drivetrain, interior, etc. Each one of these key functions is its own group within the organization. Each one of these functions is represented by the vertical columns we see on this org chart, with the associated staff included below the manager. When an organization decides to implement a project, it may decide to execute it within its functional organization. This is called a functional organization structure for the project. In this organizational approach, the project is run by the functional managers as a group. Project coordination is done as a committee. The functional managers are responsible for the project scope, the schedule, and the budget. They must interface with the client, do quality assurance, and purchase any material or services. Each functional group operates independent of the other groups. In a classic functional organization, all communication among the team members is done up through the functional managers across and back down. This type structure has certain advantages. The resources allocated to the project are optimized. The same staff works in the ongoing operations of the organization and the project. When the project doesn't need their services, they go back to their day job, thereby limiting the time and cost they spend on the project. Technical control is improved because the project team is embedded in their functional group. They have access to the technical experts in the group. Also, the functional managers overseeing their work and thus controls the technical content of the project. Communication and procedures have been established as part of the normal work process. Everyone knows the work process, and no new processes are created for the project. And finally, at the end of the project, each team member goes back to his or her previous work. There's no requirement to move or reallocate staff. Everyone just keeps doing their old job. However, the disadvantage of this organization is there's no one person in charge of the project. The functional managers run the project as a committee, and they share budget and schedule authority. In fact, each functional manager may create a separate budget and schedule for his department and his staff. This makes project coordination much more complex. Also, from a customer perspective or a sponsoring organization perspective, they must deal with all the functional managers. There's no focal point. Obviously, the functional manager is going to favor the functional priorities over the project priorities. The project activities can easily get siloed with each group and each function working independently, and then the functional managers hoping it all fits together at the end. A functional organization chart for a project works well for small projects done in the course of normal business. However, as projects get more complex, we may want to consider other options. In the next lesson, we'll examine matrix organizations. These organization types attempt to address the disadvantages of a functional organization while keeping the advantages.